With the $5 meal deal at McDonald's, you pick a McDouble or a McChicken, then get a small fry, a small drink, and a 4-piece McNuggets. That's a lot of McDonald's for not a lot of money.
Price and participation may vary. For a limited time only.
There's more to imagine when you listen. So let your imagination soar with Audible. Audible has audio titles from every genre that will inspire you to imagine new worlds, possibilities, and ways of thinking. As an Audible member, you get to choose one title a month to keep from their entire catalog. Enjoy an exciting reawakening of a beloved classic with the Audible original, David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. Produced by Academy Award-winning director Sam Mendes. Starring Ncuti Gatwa, Helena Bonham Carter, and Theo James. This adaptation breathes new life into a familiar tale. New members can try Audible free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/imagine or text IMAGINE to 500-500. That's audible.com/imagine or text IMAGINE to 500-500.
Worried about letting someone else pick out the perfect avocado for your perfect impress them on the third date guacamole? Well, good thing Instacart shoppers are as picky as you are. They find ripe avocados like it's their guac on the line. They are milk expiration date detectives. They bag eggs like the 12 precious pieces of cargo they are. So let Instacart shoppers overthink your groceries so that you can overthink what you'll wear on that third date. Download the Instacart app today to get free delivery on your first 3 orders, while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
This episode brought to you by the following patrons. I have a fork at Taco Bell. Leaf Girl, Min, Madeline, Alyssa, Vixen, Holly, Natasha, Laura, Jeremy with the laser eyes, Allie, Logan, Libby, Aaron, Kristen, Amy, Tia, and Jonathan. So thank you guys so much. And all the patrons want you to know that you're loved, you're listened to, and you're a valuable member of this awesome Horror Virgin community. And if you want to hang out with us, please do so in the Facebook group where we hang out daily. Welcome back to Decision Desk 2024, Horror Virgin Election Edition.
No! We are recording this the night of the election. By the time you hear it, it'll be over. And I'll either be trying to emigrate to Canada or...
Trying to emigrate to Canada.
It's Canada.
A foolproof plan.
It's a foolproof plan. Thank you for tuning into Horror Virgin. I'm Paige.
And I'm your Horror Virgin Todd, which means I don't like scary movies, but you guys make me watch them. And this week, we changed the movie we did.
Right.
Because we wanted to do a guest with that last one, and scheduling didn't work. Largely because it's my fault. I apologize. It's my fault. But we rescheduled the guest for next week. So we will be doing the movie that we said we'd be doing this week, which, Paige, remind me, is...
So next week will be I Saw the TV Glow. This week is LongLegs, because this basically turned into a new releases month, because it's basically just all the movies Paige wanted to see this summer and unfortunately had no time with which to do so. And so we're doing it now.
Boom, baby. That's the theme, I guess.
Boom.
But this week we watched a LongLegs, like Paige just mentioned.
LongLegs.
So, Paige, I'm assuming this is the first time you saw it too, right?
This is the first time I saw it. I also went in blind. I watched no trailers. I read no things about it. Nothing.
You had heard it was something, though, right? Like, people talked about this movie.
The only thing I knew is that it was a serial killer movie.
Yes.
That's all I knew.
I knew it was a serial killer movie. And I knew Nick Cage was in it. Like, so I knew we were in for like some unhinged Cage.
Sure.
And we get it.
Yeah.
We do get unhinged Cage in this, which I did sort of love.
I mean, here's where I'm at. I'm torn because, like...
Tell me why, and Natalie Imbruglia. Tell me why. Those are jokes from the same decade.
Different songs.
I know, but same decade.
I'm all out of faith. This is how I feel. Watching votes on TV, and I am shaking with blind rage. So this movie... Hear me out. I have a lot of different feelings and thoughts about this movie, and specifically Nicolas Cage in this movie. Numero uno. I am aggressively here for this new genre of movie that is basically just a period piece of what if the Satanic Panic was real. I liked it when it was Last Night with the Devil or Late Night with the Devil. I've liked it a couple other times. I don't think this is as successful as Late Night with the Devil.
I think Late Night with the Devil's way better than this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel, but I like that lane of idea, if that makes sense.
Yes, me too.
Because I feel like a lot of things kind of fall into that, and I'm kind of digging it, right?
Give me a satanic panic at the same time that we have like Silence of the Lambs? Yes.
Okay, so I feel like this movie is kind of trying to be like a Seven or a Silence of the Lambs.
It's definitely Silence of the Lambs it's trying to be.
Right.
And I don't hate that it's trying to be that.
I don't
like,
either.
Those are the portions of it that I'm into.
Yes, yeah, and to be honest, and it's kind of True Detective-y, and so
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, oh, I'm in, right? Secondly, I feel like this needed to be a series instead of a movie, 100%, because they yada through what would have been 4 episodes of information in this third act.
Yeah.
And I am not sold on the supernatural aspect. I think that's a little weird, and I think it works better in a series where you have had time to set that up more. I'll use Twin Peaks as an example. If spoiler for Twin Peaks.
Give me both peaks, Paige. Give me both peaks.
Also, it's like 40 years old. So if you haven't watched Twin Peaks by now, you're out of time. Like, whatever. Where we find out that there is essentially an alternate dimension of beings that may be benevolent or malevolent. And one of them has been controlling or possessing Laura Palmer's father. And that's why he committed the murders. Because this movie is kind of in that lane. But because it's only literally an hour and 40 minutes long, it goes from like Silence of the Lambs, which is very much a story grounded in reality and grounded in actual cases.
I know exactly where you're going, and I fully agree. Yes, but continue.
Yeah, it goes from that to there's a magic ball in the brain of this doll. And you're like, oh, wait, hey, hold on. What now?
Oh,
what,
no, please.
What? No.
Please know that when they introduced Phantasm lore into this, it only got better for me. I was like, no, this makes sense.
By the end, I was like, is this part of the Phantasm universe? And if so...
Where's the ice cream man? His music saved me.
Where's Reggie? Now, final thought on this. I think Nicolas Cage thinks he's in a completely different movie. Like, his parts, entertaining though they are, do not fit with the tone of this film at all. It takes me out of it every time. And here's the thing. I feel like if he had just been plain old Nicolas Cage and played it straight, he'd been fucking terrifying.
I mean, that would have been more like The Black Phone,
right?
Even though that's Ethan Hawke.
Oh, which, thank you.
I know he is one of your horny, like, fantasies, I guess.
In that movie with the shirt off, it was a thing.
Black Phone me, daddy, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what you'd say in that situation.
Here's that, but Black Phone's a great comparison because it seems largely grounded in reality.
It is.
But then you have this one magical realism part of it, right?
Which could be explained away as like the hallucinations of a child.
Absolutely.
Who is in the worst possible situation. And, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in this movie makes it very clear that no, you can't explain any of this away, really.
Which I knew they were going to do that in the first 15 minutes because they were like, hey, she's not like full-on psychic, but she's half psychic.
Sure.
You guys know how that's a thing? There's like a half psychic thing out there that works or is a thing.
Here's the thing. If that was the one piece that was magical realism,
I would have forgiven it too.
I would have forgiven it.
You're not wrong.
Especially if you find out, like, if there's a real life, like, if you take the air quotes devil out of it and it's just her mom was in a relationship with a serial killer and was the accomplice, and this is her, you know, we're interpreting it as psychic, but maybe it is her digging through some trauma to solve it. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Like, and that I think is a lot more acceptable. That's where I land on this. There's a lot about this I like. Honestly, the tone outside of Nicolas Cage, I think Blair Underwood's performance is fucking incredible.
Yeah, he does an amazing job in pretty much everything.
Amazing in this movie.
Yeah.
I think she's just kind of there. The main character.
Paige, I have thoughts about that. I have thoughts about the main character's performance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's my thing, though. If this is a true detective series, right? If we give this 8 episodes, right? We have so much more about her to dig into, to really connect with her, to feel about her. I feel like they're trying to go for someone who has been severely traumatized as a child and is having trouble accessing their emotions. Potentially, this is a trauma response or some sort of neurodivergence because we know she's psychic.
Oh, Paige, please. That doesn't exist. She's only half psychic.
She's only half psychic.
Please.
Whatever. But because we only get an hour and 40 minutes, we don't really get to dig into it. And so she just comes off as low affect and plain, like a blank slate.
She's one note.
Yeah.
For an hour and 30 minutes of an hour and 40 minute movie, she has one note. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't think it's a performance issue. I think it's maybe a script issue.
Ooh, I think it's directorial.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I'd accept that too.
I think the intention was to make it the last 10 minutes when she's losing her fucking mind at all these realizations she's having, or the remembering of what happened. Either way, that is effective. Like, I understand. Like, you hold that actor from like emoting super a lot until those moments.
Right.
I think there should have been it should have been more of a crescendo than like a literal like pianissimo to forte.
Right.
Like, you got to like gradually get me up there. You know what I'm saying? So like, there was no build. It just went from 1 to 10.
Right.
It did make the 10 very effective though. Like,
sure.
When she started losing her mind, like driving the car over there, I was like, oh my God, that was great. We're fucking popping off.
I did have a problem with her not trying to stop Blair Underwood from killing his wife, where I was like, girl, what are you doing right now?
I would have shot him the second he asked me to come to his daughter's birthday party. Are you serious? No. I realized that's like 3 months ago.
Well, I'm just like, shoot the doll. Like, you know that the thing is inside the doll and you know what it is. Shoot it. And she just stands there and listens to a lady get full-blown murdered. Oh. And I was like, ridiculous.
We hear the stabs from a room over, Paige.
Yeah. The door's open. And then he stumbles in bloody and then she shoots him. And I was like, you had a good 3 minutes to end this shit bloodlessly.
I mean, but Paige, it's Blair Underwood. So, like, think about it. Like, is there a will they, won't they between these two characters, but the wife's in the way, and she was just like, I don't know if he's murdering her to then murder me or murdering her for me. Think about it, Paige.
Look, I'm going to stand here and say, I get it. I get it.
Blair, no! How dare you? No, Paige.
No,
How dare you walk into my trap like that?
I find him, I had this conversation with somebody over the weekend about a different movie, but I find Blair Underwood incredibly attractive.
Was it Jake?
No, it was not. But if I told him, he'd be like, yeah, of course.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not into those shapes, but I do recognize that those shapes have success ratios that I could not dream of. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. I know a man's a handsome man.
Yeah. Oh, and he's rocking like a real deep voice in this too. And I'm like, all right.
Oh, is he?
Okay. But he's doing it almost like he is perfectly capturing this like 70s hardened FBI guy vibe. And it's not something that we normally see from Blair Underwood. He's usually just Blair Underwood. And then this, it's like, no, he put on a character for this. And I think his is way more successful than the wildness that is Nicolas Cage in this movie.
Okay, so it seems like, if I'm reading you correctly, Paige, you didn't love Nick Cage's performance. And I think it is a level of unhinged that we haven't seen in a Nick Cage movie in years. And I was happy we were back.
That's fair. We're getting the full Cage.
And I do think he is creepy.
Yes.
Candidly, let me tell you how I watched this movie.
Sure.
Because I feel like it'll explain a lot of my feelings on it. And that is, like, if you like scary movies, guys, watch it. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely worth a watch.
You should watch it. Is it great? In my opinion, no, it's not great. But here's why I think you should watch it. And here's why I think it's only good, not great. I had to work all day yesterday. All day. And then I had to watch this movie.
Yep.
So I was literally at a work thing until I think I got back at 9:30 at night. So I started the movie at like 10. And at like 11:15, I turned it off because I was scared and also falling asleep to the point where I was struggling to like, wait, why is she going over there? Why is her mom dressed like a nun in a brown habit? So like, but it was also scary. There were moments where I was like, oh, fuck, why does someone should tell him he looks like that? But like, I probably would have fallen asleep and completely missed the, I think, sort of fun but insanity of the ending.
Sure.
I would have missed that because I would have fallen asleep. So I had to like stop it and like go to sleep, and I watched it at 5:30 this morning.
I'm sorry.
Before I had to go back and work all day until 9:15 at night when we could get together to record. So, here we are. But I'll say this, like, I do think I agree with you on the one-note-ness of the actress. I think the direction, and I wonder if, I don't know anything about who created this movie.
Cinematography is incredible. Like, it's shot beautiful.
But that's not direct. Well, it might be,
yeah.
But it's not commonly the direction. That's the cinematographer.
Photography direction was great.
I agree.
Performance direction, maybe not so much.
Yeah, so like the guy who is technically the director is like in charge of the performances. And I wonder if it's maybe they're new at this level of directing, because I feel like the actress was crushing the performance of someone who was like internally going through a lot, because you can see that on her face and the way she emotes, but she still is one note the whole performance in her affect, right? I would have loved to have seen a bigger build out of this, out of her.
I'm giving you more information about the director. So they wrote and directed this.
Okay. I love those kind of people.
Sure.
The writer-directors are my favorite kind of creators.
Oh, interesting. They were also in Legally Blonde as an actor.
Wait, is this Anthony Perkins' son?
It's Osgood Perkins. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I remember this from when this came out, because this is one of the things that people would say, you need to see this movie, it's scary, you'll hate it, and it was directed by Psycho's son.
Right.
Which is notable. That's cool. That like gives you, I think, immediate horror cred in my mind.
Sure, and this is like their fifth horror thing. So they directed Blackcoat's Daughter, which has been recommended to me a number of times. I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in This House, which I have not seen. Gretel and Hansel, which had mixed reviews, but some people really liked. Twilight Zone TV series he directed an episode of, and that was the one that Jordan Peele brought back in 2020.
Okay.
Again, mixed reviews. And then this. Now, here's the thing. Story-wise, again, I feel like they needed more time, and I feel like it could have been a series, but that's because it is interesting. Like, all the FBI stuff, I'm so fucking in. Like, you have me at hello. This is Twin Peaks vibes, that I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And I'm even here for the magical realism if we had just a little more time for it to percolate, so it made a little bit more sense, sort of. So I wouldn't say this is bad, really, at all.
I don't think it's bad at all. I hope that didn't come across.
Yeah.
Especially if you like to be scared in movies. This is a scary movie.
Yeah.
This definitely got me. But I do think something didn't land for me, and I think it was probably the pacing and the low affect of that main actress.
Sure.
Which I don't know, because I wasn't on set. My instinct is to assume that that's a directorial choice.
Yeah.
And I do think it does make, when she's at a 10, it's very drastic. It's a huge difference,
Sure.
right? So I understand why you might do it. I would have liked to have seen it build. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think what I need from this, as far as that performance or that character, is a Florence Pugh in Midsommar.
I think she does a good job with the slow build of dread.
Right.
And it comes through in her performance. Yes, I agree. That's actually, I think, the perfect
comparison
example of how you crescendo into that.
Right.
Yes.
And and even if you don't like that movie, you can't watch it and be like, her performance, like, she is crushing
I
it.
don't love that movie, and everyone's performance in it is pretty stellar.
But that movie is twice as long as this. So they have more time.
And you
for
can
that
live in
to
that world
subtly
longer.
breathe, and you can live in that world longer.
Yeah.
And so I almost, like, it made me want more of this. It made me want a series of this, which ultimately means your story and characters are interesting and good and cool. But, like, in this shorter format, I feel like we're missing some of the pieces that would build in that subtlety. And Nicolas Cage is at a full cage, which seems kind of out of step for the quiet dread of the rest of the movie.
I think that also, and I as I like am thinking through like the themes in the movie, maybe the director was like, yes, I want you at a 1 until the very end, because every time we see Nick Cage, he goes from 1 to 10 in very scary ways. And that is very effective.
He's very, very scary in the beginning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, it scared me. And just because of that, like, jumpiness to his, like, cadence and speech and the way he, like, his aggression levels, because it can pop off at a moment's notice anytime he's on screen. It's like you're nervous, you know? So like it's effective.
Well, and early in the movie when you haven't really seen too much of him and you're like, is it Nicolas Cage? What is going on? That confusion kind of helps feed that anger or that fear.
Yeah.
But like the more we see of him, the more out of place the makeup and the face and everything looks. And I'm like, if you just put a wig on regular Nicolas Cage and he gave the same performance, it's a 10. That's so scary. Especially in the scene like in the hardware store where she's like, that creepy guy is here again. And it's like, yeah, the one in a full like face mask, basically. Like, yeah.
I fully do think that's a full ass face mask he's wearing. I mean, it looks so, I mean, you know it's Nick Cage under there. You hear it in his voice probably before you recognize it in the face.
Yes.
But you can still sort of see it in the face too once he's on screen long enough. And I do agree, the longer he's on screen, the less it plays out.
Right.
Because the first time when you just barely see the face, and it is off. Like there's something off about it. You like instinctually know. And all you need is like the 8 frames they give it to you in like a tenth of a second. And you're like, oh, what the fuck? And then it gives you the title card again.
Right.
And credits again. We got like 10, we can't talk about credits.
Oh yeah, we'll talk. I mean, we'll get through.
I hated them though.
Oh, I believe it. I feel like if we're gonna compare this to 2 other movies that are similar, look at Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah.
And yes, Buffalo Bill is a character as like a serial killer where there's a whole bunch of things going on with Buffalo Bill, but it's still Ted Levine, which it like was so effective and scary that it ruined Monk for all of us. Like anytime you see Ted Levine in anything, you're like that weird voice guy. Like you can't escape it, right?
No, that's what I always see when I see him.
I feel the same way about Twin Peaks. Whenever I see Richard Wise in anything, I'm like, he's up to no good. But it was just him as a guy, and it was just his performance. And I feel like Nicolas Cage is dynamic enough of a performer and scary enough as a regular human that like you could have downplayed the makeup and let his performance do the whole thing. And we would have had actually kind of a scarier movie all the way through. That's just my thoughts though. Just my opinion.
I don't disagree, but I think the only scare that would be less scary is the first one.
Sure.
Where you barely even see his face, but it is scary, right?
Right.
I think it gets more scary when you see him on screen more. So like the longer he's on screen looking like a normal like dude.
Right.
And you like realizing, oh, this could be sort of John Q anybody. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like that makes the dread sort of like, oh my, it could be anybody.
Right.
So like I think it's scarier if he plays it like that. The later in the movie you go. But I do think like
that initial scare.
Yeah, that really freaked me out.
But I also think you could shoot that without his face. You could go without his face and still get most of that scare. But yeah, that's the one that really works with the makeup, but then the rest of them don't.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so I'm mixed on this one, but overall, like, yeah, if you like Black Phone and Seven and Silence of the Lambs, watch this. Because you will probably like it.
And honestly, if you just want to know what Ronnie Camerari's been up to since Moonstruck, watch this. It's good to find out what he's been up to.
It is good to find out what he's been up to.
But Paige, maybe we should get through this movie scene by wonderful scene.
Sure. So we open with a quote from the band T-Rex from 1971. While you're slim and you're weak, you've got the teeth of a hydra upon you. You're dirty, sweet, and you're my girl. We open on the interior of a car as it drives through a snowy landscape up to a house that kind of looks like a church. That'll be important later.
It does.
Yes.
All of this is like Super 8 footage, by the way. So it's like square footage shot clearly like in the quote 70s. It's obviously not shot in the 70s, but it looks that way, right? Which
look at the square footage down here. Sorry.
I sort of made a joke similar to that to Natalie when we were watching it. As she was like going back to sleep because I got home so late from the mandatory fun event I had to do at work, you know?
Right.
Anyway, yeah. But it's cool. I like that 70s effect because it like really sets you in a time and place.
Yeah. And it does it without specifically telling us what year or when it is.
Right.
We will find out later it is 1974, but not until the very, very end. But there's a little girl writing at her desk upstairs. She goes downstairs. You can kind of tell from her clothes it is either the 70s or very early 80s, probably the 70s.
Yeah.
She notices her mom's station wagon there, kind of abandoned. She hears a call from the woods, which, by the way, if something calls your name from the woods, don't fucking follow it, run away, go home. But we get a very effective music sting a la Psycho.
Yeah.
It is, your strings.
Which, I mean, if anybody can do that callback, it's the guy
Right.
whose dad was Psycho, right?
He earned it.
Yeah.
He earned it. And we see Nicolas Cage's face from basically the nose down in like a silent scream in the cold, like with his breath fogging. And he, in a crazy voice that I cannot imitate, is just like, there she is, almost birthday girl. I brought my long legs today, but let's see if I could bend down. And then we immediately cut to credits. Here's what I will say. Fucking incredible cold open.
Oh, it's so
Good
scary.
job.
Yeah.
Good job. Good job. If I was reading this as a script and that was your cold open, high fives.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great way to rope us in.
This is the moment I like jumped so like drastically in bed while watching this that Buttercup, like who normally sleeps right next to me, was like, "Oh, I guess it's a movie, Nate," and she walked away from me and slept on the other side of the bed. And we're like 4 minutes in, and I'm jumping that hard. Like I was so scared by that moment. It was so fucking freaky.
Yep. And then we get into the credits, which are long, but they are flashing subliminal images.
Yes. The first 5 minutes and 33 seconds of this movie, there's only 1 minute of movie.
Mm-hmm.
The rest are credits. They give you the opening production animations. They give you the opening production title cards where it just shows you the names you just saw the animations for. Then it does a minute of movie that is very scary. And then you get all of the title cards again in red.
Yes, I do like them in red. The style, I did like it.
Just start your movie.
Oh, I know.
And then do that cold open. That would have been super effective. And guys, I understand this is like a production company thing and they need to get credit for the movie. But like 3 times? You're going to make me watch 3 times all of the companies before you get... No, just start with the movie, then give me those credits, and then finish the movie.
Well, and here's what I will say. Because the one thing that I did get from those credits is because they're including the subliminal stuff, I was like, oh, it's the Satanic Panic. We're having a Satanic Panic movie.
Yes.
Now I'm buckled into my Satanic Panic research brain. It is one of my favorite periods of true crime. If you're a true crime nerd, fascinating time to read about American true crime.
You must be loving it literally right now then, because we're reliving it.
It's not as fun to live through it. It's way more fun after the fact to be like, can you believe they believed that shit? It's not as fun now when it's like, and then I dropped that bear off from my car and went on to not have vaccines. Like, it's not as fun now.
Did you hit a bear with your car? Hang on.
I'm not the third front runner for president.
Wait, are we talking about RFK right now?
Yeah. That baby bear, that dead bear on his car, and a dead whale, and a dead... He needs to stop picking up dead animals. It's not safe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man.
Do you think that's why Trump gave him the title czar, because of the bear?
No, I think it's because they're both funded by Russia, Paige.
I mean, yeah, probably. Anyway, part 1, his letters.
I mean, more or less, this dude is like a doll maker / Zodiac killer.
Let's talk about the fucking Zodiac killer for a second. Have you watched the new Zodiac killer documentary on Netflix?
Paige, I watched it the evening it came out.
Fantastic. I'm so glad we can talk about it. Because if you haven't watched it, please go watch it.
Spoiler alert for the Zodiac killer in case you're unaware.
Spoiler. For those of you who haven't watched it, you're probably thinking, wasn't it that guy whose son wrote a book about it being his dad? No.
It's not.
Is it? It's not.
It's the guy who is the guy in the movie, though. Like, if you've seen the...
Yes.
I think it's a David Fincher movie, right? Zodiac.
Yes, Zodiac.
It's the guy they say is the guy in the Zodiac.
Yes. And in fact, most of the investigators have been saying for a long time. I would say the documentary that is recently out lays out a lot of circumstantial evidence that would very much suggest that that man was the Zodiac killer. He made ciphers in his free time. They look exactly like the Zodiac ones.
Yeah.
And it will make you incredibly frustrated that people saw a man literally abusing children and were like, but he's such a nice guy, and didn't do anything about it. It will frustrate you. All that to say, this borrows heavily from Zodiac, but the part that frustrated me a little bit is, as we'll get into some of the conversations with the FBI, while they are accurate to what the FBI believed at the time, for some things, they are woefully inaccurate in what we know of those cases today, and that is very frustrating. I had to live with it in the movie because in my mind, I'm like, the FBI probably would have said that. Even though they were wrong, they probably would have said that at the time.
Yeah.
We'll get through them as we go.
Yeah.
Because this is my particular nerdery.
Yeah. I don't think this movie needed the supernatural element at the end for me to like buy the way the FBI was acting. I mean, the end would have played out differently because there's no supernaturalness to it, right?
Right.
But I didn't need that in the movie for me to buy that the FBI would be this sort of dumb about the satanic panic. I bet they were this dumb about it when it was happening the first time.
So the FBI invested a lot of time and energy, and so did local law enforcement,
Yes.
a lot of people, into things that were provably untrue, and in doing so, missed actual crimes that were happening. And in some cases, for very high profile crimes, did not do their due diligence. And now modern day with new technology and more study into what makes crime happen, we have now discovered very, very different things about some of these crimes. As we go through the movie, I'll point them out as we go, just so you know, the listener, if you're not up on your most violent decade in America, the 1970s.
Was it the most violent decade, or is that just when we started to pay attention to serial killers?
See, this is a good thing, Todd, because it is the most violent decade on record.
That's sort of my question, right? Like, where's the record? Yeah, where did we start tracking it?
Because this is the first time at which we actually started sharing information between precincts. It's where we finally start to get good at fingerprinting. It's the advent of television news, which means that more people know about what's happening in places that's not where they live. But it's also a time when unleaded gas polluted our air to the point that it might have driven people crazy.
I think it made a whole generation of people dumb, kind of. Yeah, like
70s.
yeah.
It's a wild time. And it's also a time at which the fear around the occult is at an all-time high. The book The Exorcist came out around this time. The Omen comes out around this time. The movie The Exorcist comes out around this time. It doesn't necessarily cause a fervor. The fervor is kind of already there. It just makes it worse with things like Michelle Remembers, etc.
Yeah.
Go listen to the Late Night with the Devil episode or Cult Podcasts episodes on the Satanic Panic.
Yeah.
We did like 4 episodes on it. Or our Conjuring 3 episode where I also shouted about a lot of these things. Anyway, we open on an FBI briefing. They're going to go door to door to ask if anyone has seen this man, and they're being paired up randomly. Our main character, Lee Harker, is paired up with another agent. They go into the neighborhood, and she seems apprehensive. And he's like, look, you stay in the car. I'll go knock. And he goes and knocks at the first house. Nothing. She looks at the house across the street, and he comes back to the car, and she says, it's that house. He's in there. And he's like, oh, a hunch. And she's like, call for backup, call everybody, he's in there.
Literally, it was like 100% this is the house.
Right.
Like, she knows it is.
She knows it is.
And he was like, whatever. Like, and they probably, honestly, we didn't see this, but it's sort of implied they've been knocking on doors for hours. Like, this is just like the next house to him, you know?
Right.
So, like, I get why he was like, I'm sure it's fine. Let me just go knock and we'll see what's what, you know?
Well, and they're not going to call out a very expensive force on a hunch.
Oh,
I
yeah,
understand
no.
why he doesn't call, right?
Yes.
It's not protocol. And no one would assume that she knew anything from not going in there. But he goes to knock on the door, and this one got me, jump scare wise.
Me
He's
too.
shot instantly.
Oh, yeah.
Instantly. And she goes into the house without backup. Don't do that. It is covered in plastic. This is clearly some sort of serial killer because the house is wrapped like Dexter.
Yeah.
And then he's just sitting on the bed and she says, don't move. And he says, I won't. And we then cut to her in a dark room with a slide projector. And she is basically naming off things that she sees. It's like a free association test.
Yeah.
And she has to name the numbers they're picking.
I've never seen The Men Who Stare at Ghosts. goats, but I imagine it was a lot of this kind of shit.
Well, Men Who Stare at Goats is supposed to be late 50s, early 60s, but they were still doing a lot of that in the FBI at this time and the CIA.
Which is like experimenting with like, are people actually psychic?
Extrasensory perception.
That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, this is them seeing if people have extrasensory perception or if they could create extrasensory perception or influence extrasensory perception. So they are testing to see if she is able to find the numbers and find the word association without them telling her.
Right.
So,
and she gets it half of the time.
Half right.
Which is good. Like, I'll say that's great odds. Them's great odds.
That is really good odds.
Yeah.
50-50? Yeah.
When he was like, listen, she's not like full-blown psychic, but she's like half-ish. She's like a halfie. She got a halfie psychic. I was like, oh, I mean, that's cool. I could buy that. You know, maybe she's just like intuitive.
Yeah.
Or maybe she has the force or something.
I mean,
I don't care. Like, I would have forgiven this.
What we see through the rest of the movie seems to be more intuitive than anything, where it's like she is very good at reading people.
Yeah.
Or very good at predicting what people will do. Just based on like, people tend to do this and so this happens.
Or just like reading their body language or whatever. Like I think you can explain that away other ways that make sense and that aren't she's psychic or half psychic, right?
Right. But regardless, Blair Underwood and his partner take her to a crime scene where a family of 4 was murdered. And they tell her that they've been tracking multiple family annihilator cases that they think are actually murders disguised as family annihilator cases. The reason they think that is because at every crime scene, they leave a cipher. And it is absolutely Zodiac cipher. It's like the same.
Yes. It looks exactly like same styles.
Right. And they've hit 10 houses with multiple different families over the last 30 years, which is actually pretty spread out for a serial killer. But I would argue that they maybe just don't know about other houses that happened during that time.
Or they went to a different jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, 100%.
But yeah, and the killer who signs all the ciphers is named LongLegs. So they ask, how did you know that guy was in the house? And she was like, it just felt like someone tapping me on the shoulder and telling me.
Yeah.
There was nothing else I could really explain it away. Meanwhile, they continue giving her information about the case where they're like, all the families have a daughter with a birthday on the 14th of a month, but only one was murdered on that date. Not really sure what that has to do with anything, but it is a common thread. They take her to the crime scene. They take her back to the FBI office where she's looking at all the files, and she listens to a 911 call where the father is calling into 911 and just saying, sleeping is the best time because the eyes are closed. And then we hear a stabbing in the 911 call.
Yeah. It's really tense, man. Like all these moments aren't like jump scary, but they're like, oh, they got me, man.
Some true crime people can listen to 911 calls. I'm not one of them.
I am not one of those either. 911 calls are, I cannot do it. Especially if like the person doesn't make it and you know that, like I can't do it.
I had to stop listening to a podcast back in the day because they got...
Was it Last Podcast on the Left?
It was not, although I've made it through those.
I've had to turn off. And not because they're not great. Like I love that podcast, but like what they were, like the subject matter was too much for me, if that makes sense. Like I was like, this episode I can't make it through. Yeah.
And that's fair. For me, it was a different one that I'm not going to name because you shouldn't listen to it anyway because the guy who hosts it is not a great guy. But he got really into playing 911 phone calls for a while and didn't warn you in the episode and someone didn't make it in a call. And so you were like listening and then you're like, oh my God, I just heard somebody die. I did not sign up for that. Okay, I am out. And I stopped listening.
That would be very hard for me.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Anyway, we cut to seemingly hours later where she has like arranged a bunch of photos on the floor. She's clearly solved part of the case.
Yeah.
And Blair Underwood comes in and is like, it's been a while. You've been looking at this a long time. Let's go get a drink. And she's like, I don't really drink. And he's like, well, then I'll drink and you tell me things.
Yeah.
Because here's what's going on. There's no forced entry. They're all killed with weapons that are inside the house, but there's no fingerprints or any other evidence that he's there. And this is one of the facts they get wrong that made my blood boil, where she's like, well, maybe accomplices like Manson. And we got to fucking talk about Charles Manson for a second. This is my birthday twin.
I do love that fact about you that you and Manson share a birthday.
Though we share a birthday.
Which, astrologically speaking, that makes sense. I get it. Like, I could see it.
More blood, more titties. No. Anyway, a lot of people want to try and classify Charles Manson as a serial killer. He is not. I don't say this to absolve him of being, he's not a good person. He definitely belonged in prison. Like there was, I'm not absolving him. I just need clarity because this drives me insane. Charles Manson didn't even attend the first 2 killings. His cult members carried them out. In fact, the first 2, seemingly without his knowledge until after the fact. He does attend the 3rd one and then loses his cool after cutting somebody's ear, and then he bones out because he could not do it.
Yeah.
And leaves them to be killed with other people. Now, that is still not a serial killer regardless, because it's only 3 deaths, not with a unique MO. 3 is the minimum to be a serial killer. And I know it's more than 3 people. I understand, but we're talking about 3 separate events where multiple people have died.
Yeah.
This is not a case of someone routinely and repeatedly committing the same crime. They are much more on the level of like a spree killer than a serial killer or a mass murderer, because they do kill a lot of people in a short amount of time. But it drives me fucking nuts when people are like, Manson, a serial killer. I'm like, not a serial killer. Definitely a cult leader, definitely influenced people through drugs and manipulation and other things to then murder people.
Yeah.
But not a serial killer. That's not what this is.
I mean, arguably, you could say is responsible for the murders, whether he did them or not. And that's why he was in jail for the entirety of his life after that.
Absolutely.
He was in the right spot.
Yes.
You know, I'm not saying that. But I think that there's some debate as to whether he killed anybody. I know there's
I don't think
there's someone he may have killed before the cult stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's entirely possible. Yes.
But I don't know if that's a real thing or not. But definitely didn't kill anybody. The cult that he started and sort of manipulated did.
Right.
But yes, I think he was largely like sort of anyway, whatever. Yeah.
He was a lifelong criminal. He did a lot of bad things in his life. He kind of bumbled his way into this cult. But people want to be like, yeah, he was a serial killer. He was not. That is not factual in any way.
Right.
And that's how this movie uses it. And I'm like, no. But it's because it's the Satanic Panic. And that's what the FBI thought at the time. They thought he was responsible for all of it, even though that was not true.
I mean, but also like semantics. And I mean, maybe not even semantics, but like that's what people see him as in pop culture, and they're referencing that more, you know, because they're wanting to place it at the time, and that's probably the way they would have talked about him at the time. So yeah,
absolutely.
Like I get why it's in the movie, even though it's not necessarily correct.
Right. And my only frustration with it is there were several other serial killers you could have used where it would have been accurate. Even people who had accomplices. John Wayne Gacy notably probably had accomplices. Like, I know it's semantics, but it is important. It's an important distinction. If you learn one thing today, it's that Charles Manson is not technically a serial killer. He is responsible for manipulating people into mass murders.
Which is a skill set. Like, man should have just focused on doing like B2B sales or something. He would have been great at that shit.
There are some people that argue he was doing B2B sales of LSD for the CIA. If not the CIA, then definitely for other people.
Probably for himself. I mean,
oh yeah, they would make bathtub acid all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, they drive home, or she drives him home, I should say, after drinking.
Yeah, because he's been drinking, she has not.
Right. The lights are on, and he's like, come in and meet my wife and daughter. And she's like, I don't really want to, but he's like, you're my new partner. Come on.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, you have to meet my wife. Like, and I get this, like, I'm going to be out late with my partner a lot working.
Right.
And I need you to have at least a relationship with my wife.
Right.
And I don't even say that because she's a woman. His partner's a woman. That's not why I'm saying that. But like,
no, just in general.
Yes. Like, like partners at this type of job, like it's more than just like a coworker. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But so she meets the wife, she meets the daughter, and this daughter's a little spooky in the way that kids get spooky, you know, where they're like, his head's cut off, but I don't know. It's kind of like veal, and veal doesn't grow. And you're like, why do you know these things?
Yeah, like,
it's not great.
The kid is very focused on like veal not moving, and she knows a lot about that whole process.
Yeah.
I was very confused. Like, what kind of media is that lady consuming? Like, is the YouTube algorithm now, instead of sending people down like white supremacy, it's just
veal information.
Like butcher tube or whatever. It's like,
I've watched some butcher tube as someone who likes to cook. Anyway, that's how I learned how to spatchcock a turkey.
Ooh, say it slow, baby.
Spatchcock.
I regretted that the second it came out of my mouth.
Well, then you should have thought about that before you asked. Anyway, she's like, hey, can she come to my birthday? Giving us a little bit of a clue that the daughter's birthday is potentially on or around the 14th.
I mean, Paige, I literally wrote in my notes, I guess this is Chekhov's family annihilation. Because we know in this moment she's going to have to save. I did write in my notes, she's going to have to save this family.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether or not she had ulterior motives for not saving everyone in the family, but she didn't save that mom.
Nope.
Anyway,
we cut to, she goes home to her house and gives her mom a call on the phone.
Yeah.
And something's a little off about her mom.
Yeah, Paige, her mom is a brown nun for Satan, or whatever this movie says.
I mean, we don't know that yet, but
She's back in the habit of murdering families.
I will follow
Guys, I have a whole
you.
idea for a sequel to this movie that's more Sister Act than this. I'm going to be honest. There's some songs.
I was going to say, does she go to an underperforming school and take their choir to the championships?
For Satan, Paige. She does it for Satan.
Oh, no. His music is pretty good.
It's way better. Yeah.
Spark something uncommon this holiday with just the right gift from Uncommon Goods. Look, I got a lot of people to buy for. I got a lot of family members. And I want their gifts to be tailored to them. I'm not buying everyone the same Snuggie this year. I'm buying people stuff that is unique to their interest. It's busy, and Uncommon Goods makes it less stressful to find those unique gifts with incredible hand-picked gifts for everyone on your list, all in one spot. These are gifts that spark joy, wonder, delight, and exclamations of, that's exactly what I wanted. Oh my God, how did you know? Are you psychic? Now I'm worried. Can you hear my thoughts? They scour the globe for original, handmade, and absolutely remarkable things. And somehow they know exactly the right gift for every person you know. Here's some of my favorite gifts that I have found on their site. Look, you know I love hosting dinner parties, cheese tastings, everything at my house. So imagine my surprise when I found hand-blown glass olive oil pourers and honeycomb cheese serving sets. I was in heaven. Do you like Mexican hot chocolate? I do. That's why you should get their traditional Mexican hot chocolate kit. It comes with a stirrer, a pitcher, and the mix for that delicious, spicy, rich hot chocolate. And you can't have Christmas without hot chocolate, baby. So shop now because they might run out. It's a limited time offer.
So, to get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/horrorvirgin. That's uncommongoods.com/horrorvirgin for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary.
It's fall, which means days are shorter, but it's not like you have less stuff to do. You're busy. So power through your busy days with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. From breakfast to dinner, lunch, snacks, anything in between, Factor has easy, nutritious options to keep you fueled and feeling your best. Just because the days are short and it gets dark early doesn't mean that you gotta go down early. Whether you like routine or you enjoy mixing it up, Factor has you covered with 35 delicious meals every week. That's potentially like 5 different meals a day because they're 7 days a week. I'm good at math. Anyway, there's over 60 additional convenience options like snacks or smoothies or little pressed juices, and they are all delicious. Don't let shorter days slow you down. Stay energized with America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service. Find guilt-free comfort foods like home-style chicken and gravy and loaded mashed potato and pork chops. That's one of Jake and I's favorites. It slaps. It has no right tasting that good. Plus, feel-good vegan options like sweet potato and chickpea curry, also super delicious. And globally inspired flavors like Peruvian shrimp and red pepper cauli grits. Jake likes the cauli grits because he's a cauliflower boy, and he says they are delicious. But stay on your A game with quality ingredients that you can trust and quality you can taste in every one of Factor's fresh, never frozen meals. So, Head to factormeals.com/horrorvirgin50 and use the code horrorvirgin50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's code horrorvirgin50 at factormeals.com/horrorvirgin50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Anyway, so she has a phone call with her mom. Her mom mentioned that her birthday's coming up too. And we're like, you don't say. But she hears a whispering voice in her house and is like, Mom, I got to call you back. Hangs up. She goes out into the spooky woods outside with a gun. There's nobody there. But when she comes back to her desk, it says, there's a letter that says, don't open till January 14th.
Paige, also, when she's outside, like walking around with the gun, you can see he's in where
house,
she was
yes.
at her desk.
Yes.
Like we see him plant that sort of over her shoulder as she's outside looking for him.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure that she doesn't see him. I think she might see him, and that's what prompts her to go into where he was, but he's no longer there, and that's when she finds the note, which this is so scary.
Yes.
I wrote in my notes, holy fuck, I don't know if I can do this right now.
This is the story of a girl whose birthday's later this week and she's home. And when he leaves her all the birthday cards, she absolutely loves it to break his codes. Anyway, it's late. It's late night energy.
I don't know what brought us to an absolutely the story of a girl reference by like 9 days or whatever that band was.
I don't remember.
But I'm glad we got there, Paige.
I don't remember. But she opens a card immediately because she's like, I ain't waiting for your shit. And it's a happy 9th birthday card and it has the cipher in it.
Yeah.
And she deciphers it using the Bible, specifically the book of Revelation. And her mom leaves a voicemail. And while she's listening to the voicemail, the cipher says, if you tell them how you got this, I'll kill your mom, basically in rhyming scheme.
Yeah.
Because rhyming is also a thing. I mean, Zodiac was fun with rhymes and stuff too. Anyway.
Fun, maybe not the right word to use.
He was a fan of
He was a fan of rhyming or of the cult podcast?
wordplay.
There you go.
He was a fan of wordplay, much like Jason Mraz.
Oof. And we do need to watch Jason Mraz. Like, what is he up to?
Oh, recently came out. So I think he's fine.
Came out?
Yeah.
As like gay?
Yes.
Nice. I honestly hadn't heard because I don't care.
Very recently. Yeah.
But great. Good for you.
He was on my cult leader radar for a while, but then he came out and I was like, I think that's what it was. He was just hiding. And now he's free to be himself and probably still going to do weird jam band shit, but I don't have to go to another concert, so it's fine.
I love We Dance, We Sing, We Steal Things. That's the last Jason Mraz album I checked in with. But that album slaps.
Yeah, don't see him live. We cut to another crime scene. And unfortunately, I love that house. Great mid-century bones, wonderful flagstone, nice warm wood. But unfortunately, a family's been dead in there for like a month because they were going to go to Disneyland and no one checked to see if they left. And so no one checked on them until they were like, seems like there's a lot of maggots at that house. And then they came and found them, unfortunately.
And we do get to see that there were a lot of maggots in that house. They do show that to us, which I didn't love.
Didn't love that either.
I get why it's in a horror movie because it was horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. And their cat was there, probably eating them.
I think it's heavily implied because the cat is still alive a month later, Paige.
Mm-hmm.
It was eating them. I literally wrote that in my notes. I was like, that cat ate that family.
Yeah, it's bad.
And you know what? I'm sorry that kitty had to go through that. I bet it was a lot on him. He didn't murder them.
Yeah.
That's not on him.
He's just a kitty trying to survive.
Yeah.
But we also find out that the daughter was 9 or 10
Yeah.
in this house.
Which is like, that's the age. That's the pattern, right?
Yeah, that's the age.
Yeah.
That's the pattern. We cut to, because serial killers have a pattern.
Yeah.
That's part of what makes them serial killers. So when you're thinking, is someone a serial killer? Question, was there a pattern? Anyway, we get back to the FBI office and she calls her mom on the payphone. And her mom, again, is like, hey, are you saying your prayers? Because that's the only thing that protects us. And she's like, I gotta go. I gotta go look at a bunch of microfiche moments. It's a montage of microfiche stuff, much like Conjuring 3. In fact, one of the microfiches she looks at is the case from Conjuring 3.
Is it microfiche if it's one?
I don't know. Or is it microfiches if it's multiple?
That's too close to microfiches. And I'm not into it. I don't want tiny shits.
No, well, then you better eat your vegetables, Todd.
Well, no, Mom.
If you want to take big old dumpers, you got to get that fiber.
Yeah.
But yeah, the devil made me do it case.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
one of the ones that she pulls up. And also, she's looking through ciphers. She is hearing the whispers. And then we see her in what looks like a library with a book called The 9 Circles of Hell, where she's tracing a symbol onto the cipher and has deciphered all the letters and comes to Blair Underwood's office and is like, yeah, it's all referencing this one case, the Camera family farm, and their daughter, Carrie Ann, definitely named for the girl in the Poltergeist
Gotta
movies.
be, right?
Gotta be.
Yeah.
Carrie Ann survived. She's in an institution now, but she saw him and she didn't die. And they're like, okay, well, that means we got to go both to this farm and to that psych hospital. But first, we're going to go to the farm, definitely at night and not at a time when lights would be on. So they go to this farmhouse, and in the letters, it said X marks the spot. So they find a place where basically they found all the bodies, and they find a cross on the floor, and they pry up the floorboards only to find a real creepy doll whose eyes open the second they pull it out of that box.
Paige, I would have murdered that doll in that moment. I would have like punched it to death with my bare hands until I had its phantasm brain orb in my hand. I would not stop hitting it like that. It was just so creepy looking. Which, Paige, when they revealed that the day after I got back from my in-laws' house, wherein which we have to sleep in a room that contains a glass case of creepy dolls. I was like, I just left that room. Why is it in this movie? And Natalie, leave this in. Please don't take this out. Leave this in. I know you're like laughing at yourself right now because you know it's true. That room has creepy dolls in it, baby. You know it. And you make me sleep in there knowing that we might die at any moment.
This was giving me real When Evil Lurks vibes.
Yes.
Where they
Yeah.
had to bring up the floorboards in that school church thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, real creepy. And then this kind of made me really laugh in this movie because they basically do an autopsy on the doll.
Wouldn't you though, Paige? Let's get to the bottom of this
Maybe.
creep factory.
I mean, when we're talking about Creep Factory, how about the coroner that's like, this is a beautiful handmade doll? And I was like, what are you into outside of this, coroner? Because I have questions.
I mean, fair question.
Yeah.
That's an adult man who's super into dolls, which, like, I get that you like your pop figurines. I'm not coming for you. I'm coming for the people who want life-size dolls.
Right.
I have questions.
Well, okay. For what purpose are the dolls?
You know what, Paige? I'm going to walk it back a bit. I bet there's like some really sad trauma-related grief processing.
Oh, yeah. No, they
that
definitely make
use
those.
dolls. So yeah, I'm gonna back away. I get it. Okay, there might be legitimate cases. I'm not saying that, but I do have follow-up questions. If you have a creepy like
If you have a ton of dolls, I have questions.
doll preference, it's that he has a preference, Paige.
He has a preference for handmade with human hair.
He's like, man, this is top shelf dollery.
Mwah.
I don't know what you call it, Paige. Candidly, I don't.
I don't know.
but
I don't know.
He's into it.
Yeah, I do know that he carries on the long tradition that Riverdale also had of having an intensely creepy coroner that turns out to just be a good dude and doesn't do anything wrong.
Which I buy. I don't know any coroners, so this is just like anecdotal, but it's a creepy job. I'd imagine that person is just like a genuinely sort of macabre maybe person. Not that they're nefarious on any level, so I'd buy just a creepy morgue guy who like is a good-natured dude.
I follow a handful of morticians on TikTok, surprising no one.
Yeah, Paige, that's the most Paige sentence I've heard in a long time.
And they're all big titty goth girls. And so, like, that seems cool. And, like, on Law and Order, they always had really cool medical examiners. And so I think it's just a horror movie thing of, like, they got to be creepy because dead. Anyway, this guy's like, I found this giant hollow silver ball in her head. Don't know what it is. It's definitely hollow. But when you hold up this thing to it, it makes a noise. That noise makes Lee Harker, the main character, be like, snakes, Satan, what's going on? Like, it like activates her brain sphere. Who knows?
You just like hear Iron Maiden in the background. I mean, you don't, but it's like that. Like that's like the vibe of the cutscenes. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Zoom. It asked if I was playing music.
I love when they compliment you.
Oh, I think you set up professional audio. Hey, okay.
I didn't realize they were throwing shade, Zoom. Calm down.
Calm down. I'm an amateur artist. She does have a flashback of someone with her in like a doll room, basically being like, you're not afraid of the dark. You are the dark. And she's like, we should open that ball. And they're like, you're not going to find anything in there. It's just a ball. It's just a beautiful silver ball.
Paige, I would be punching that ball until that ball contained no ball.
Right?
I
don't trust
I am
it.
so terrified at this point. It was so dark in my room last night as I was watching this movie, and I was so scared of everything. I wanted to either run or punch it.
But what if Jody's in there?
Guys, we potentially, I don't know where it goes, might save Jody at some point.
Who
We can't
knows?
punch at me. Stop punching Jody.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we cut to Nicolas Cage, full makeup, goes to a hardware store, creeps on the girl that works there, and she's just like, Dad, help. And he's like, when's your birthday?
Yes, which at this point is sort of like,
I'ma kill you.
come on, lucky number 14, and she's gonna get murdered, right? Or not even just her, but her family's gonna get annihilated.
Right. My sister's birthday's on a 14th, so.
Paige, I'm just glad that you don't have any trips planned where you'll be going home and staying in the house of your father anytime soon.
Did I mention my mom's got dolls?
Oh, God. Paige, you had a good run. Paige. But ultimately, it was your fault, and Daddy Longlegs tried to warn you.
He did try to warn me. Oh, well. I would have paid attention if maybe there'd been some shirtlessness like Black Phone. Anyway.
I knew that's what you liked about it, you hypocrite. No, I mean, you are not a hypocrite where's that concerned. You're very honest about it.
Super honest.
You're very honest about your horny nature with all of that.
Yeah, and it was a decent movie. Anyway.
It actually was.
So he gets back in the car and he goes full Nicolas Cage, shout singing song lyrics with no music to no one. And I'm like,
it's a little bit more creepy than Tom Cruise and Jerry Maguire shout singing Free Fallin'.
Yeah.
But it's like similar vibes.
Similar vibes.
Yeah.
Similar vibes. The science is there. Yeah, like that couch jumper vibes.
Yeah.
Anyway, they go to the psych hospital to talk to Carrie Ann, who saw the poltergeist through the TV but survived. And played wonderfully by Kiernan Shipka, who was on Mad Men.
That was the first thing I saw her in, but she was like a young child in that show.
Right. And then Adventures of Sabrina.
Yes.
If you're a Sabrina person.
Yeah.
But she does a great job in this. She's only in this for like one scene. She's incredible. Because she's just like, oh yeah, no, I was catatonic, but then I woke up and he was there and I was so glad to serve him. And like,
Paige.
Papa did the right thing by killing all of us. And then she's doing it in rhymes. And you're like, oh my God.
It's not even rhyme. Like I don't even know if you could call it a dialect, but she's saying she's talking like this because I wrote down some of it.
Yeah.
If he told me to kill you with my bare hand, I'd be happy to do.
Yes.
Happy as peaches to watch the ground come up to meet me. Like, she is speaking in a way that is both in an interesting, creepy cadence, but also it almost sounds like English isn't her first language and she's having to search for each word.
Right.
But it's clearly not.
Whatsoever, so he says, to kill you. Like, it's you dirty, flirtatious angel bitch. Yeah, dirty, flirty angel bitch.
Yes, I wrote that one down too. But a lot of that is like the creepiness of it is very much in the performance.
Yeah.
And the actress that you mentioned, like
Kiernan Shipka.
Yeah, she is crushing this performance. And this is, I think, the only time you really see her in this movie.
That's it. We hear about her later, but this is the only time we actually see her. And they leave, and but through her flashbacks and her telling us about what happened, we know that there was a doll in the house, and so that's somehow part of it, and that it somehow influenced her father to kill their entire family in a very scary flashback.
Yeah.
And so at this point, she's like, okay, there's something with the doll. Is it magic? I don't know. But then Blair Underwood's like, hey, weird. She knew your name, and we're pretty sure he came to visit her. So how does he know your name? Like, what aren't you telling us? This case was stone cold, and now we have a million leads. What are you not telling us? You need to go talk to your mom. And she's like, why would my mom know? And they're like, because your birthday's on the 14th, and your mom called in a police report on your 9th birthday on the 13th. about a trespasser. So you need to go talk to her about what happened that night. So she goes home to talk to her mom. And it is weird. The house is strange.
I would say, okay, this is where like the metaphor I think starts to bleed out. And I started to suspect the mom.
Yeah, same. I started to suspect her in this moment.
Because the house, like she's clearly a hoarder, the mom is.
Right.
And sharp, but not all there mentally is the only way I could think
Or seems to be dissociating.
Yeah. Like she's not dumb. She's not like not a threat. In fact, I think she's very calculated and is very scary, honestly.
Yes.
But there is just some disconnect that makes her very scary.
Yeah.
I'll just say it that way.
No, I would agree.
Yeah.
And so she's asking her, like, what about that night? And she's like, I don't remember anything that day. I don't remember, but anything that happened that day, I didn't throw away, and it's in your room.
Yeah.
So she goes into her room. She finds a toy chest. She takes it back to her place, and that's where she finds a Polaroid of LongLegs.
Yeah. She's like going through these Polaroids at her mom's place, and she put on rubber gloves to do that.
Yes.
And I was like, because she's an FBI agent. I actually do sort of buy she would do that. But in my mind, I was like, this fucking nerd. Like, you're at home. But I mean, like, don't get me wrong.
But if you find evidence, you know.
Paige, 100%. It is the right call. But I was like,
yes.
I would never have thought to do that.
Right. Well, and that's why you're not an FBI agent, Todd.
Paige, nor would I be. But they would also never take me. It's like a mutual thing between me and the FBI. Yeah.
Sure.
We both have no interest.
Right. But so she brings the photo in. She's like, this is the guy. And they're like, do you want to do a manhunt based on a photo, even though you don't know how you have a connection to this dude? Now, we watched the cold open, so we know that she's the little girl from the cold open. We figured that out. And they're like, she's like, yeah, this is the guy. I'm sure he's the guy. We cut to a bus stop.
We also know she's half psychic.
Right, half psychic.
So, like, we know that it's, she's probably going to be right. She might not be,
right,
but she's probably going to be right.
Probably.
But it cuts to a bus stop, and it's Nick Cage at the bus stop, and you're like, oh, she's right.
Yeah.
And then the police immediately pull up on him because, they have a Polaroid of what he looks like, so they know exactly where he is. I was like, oh, shit, is this 9 months later? Like, it would have taken them so long to zero in on this dude's location with a Polaroid in the 90s, Paige.
Oh, yeah. It is unbelievable is an understatement to what is happening in this scene. There's no way. There's literally no way. But they found him, and he seemingly surrenders peacefully. And they're like, okay, what's your name? He's like, I'm Dale Ferdinand Cobble. I'm a friend of a friend of a friend. Happy birthday. And he like sings to her. And we cut back revealing that this is a video that they took of his interrogation, and he's been singing to her for 24 minutes. And then they do the 80s satanic panic thing where they're like, well, we found his notebooks and he was definitely worshiping Satan, but we don't know that he killed anybody. And apparently in America, you can worship Satan if you want, but he definitely does know who you are. So we're more worried about that part than the Satan part.
Right.
Because like this dude do seem creepy and he do know who you are. And she's like, well, can I go talk to him? Because I'm pretty sure that he's not doing this alone. I feel like he has to have an accomplice because there's no sign of him in the house. And they're like, all right, sounds good to us. We're not going to question this at all.
So at this point, Paige, I had two theories. When she was like, he has to have an accomplice because there's no physical evidence of him being in the house except for the letters. So someone is breaking in and dropping these letters, or he's planting it on them and they're dropping them as they die or whatever, right?
Something,
like
yes.
there is some answer there, but I think it might be an accomplice. And I was like, oh,
right,
it might be Santa Claus.
Oh, Santa Claus. See, that's one I didn't consider.
Because this is a joke, by the way. I'm just going to say.
Okay.
And here's how I got to Santa Claus, though.
He sees you when you're sleeping and knows when you're awake.
Paige. And we do hear the voiceover, yes, in the 911 call, talking about like it's easier to do when their eyes are closed.
When their eyes are closed.
And wouldn't that have been a banger reveal if that was just like Santa talking to an elf?
Garbage day. Yeah.
How dare you?
100%. That would be wild. Here's what I have to say. At this point, I suspected either that her mom was the accomplice or that she was the accomplice in a fugue state. And we were going to get one of the two.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
I really just thought it was the mom because they do sort of telegraph it, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I like the way it plays out.
No, it's still interesting to kind of consider the mom in that scenario and kind of what that means and why. So it's not like, it's not cheap, like it's not like you're like, of course it's but she's asking, and he's like, well, you're the seventh girl that we gave the same choice over and over, Crimson or Clover. You destroy the gift or you bow down.
Yeah.
We will find out that that's very, very literal, that you destroy the doll or you either die or you serve him as an accomplice. But he gives us a clue. He's like, knock, knock. It's the Bible lady. It's a gift from the church. And he's like, but when we showed up at your house, we knew that your house was whiter than anyone and we were doing the right thing because it looked like a church. And he's like, I'm not going to be here forever, but I'll be, in the Father's wings. Like, I'm here. And she's like, what the hell are you talking about? And he's like, don't worry about it. He worships Satan and then smashes his head to death against the table.
He literally just says, Hail Satan, like Henry Zabrowski's ending a podcast.
Right.
And then smashes his face against a table over and over. And man, like, Nicolas Cage's performance is way over the top, but it is so scary because of that. Like that.
Well, and the body horror in that scene's pretty gnar.
Paige, I gagged a little bit when he smashes his face and then before he picks his head all the way up.
Breaks his nose.
Well, you see that too, but the one that really got me was when he smashes his face and then before he picks his head all the way back up, he pauses and spits out some teeth.
Yeah.
And then pulls his head up and goes again. I was like, oh, God. It's just like so visceral.
Yeah. For me, it was when he came back up and his nose was basically gone.
Yes.
And he had broken all the cartilage in his nose and it was just like the skull.
Yeah. Crazy.
But
crazy good performance, man.
Part 3, the birthday girls.
Yeah.
And at this point, she's like, I got to go talk to my mom. And so after watching that, Blair Underwood's partner is like, I'm going to drive you to the house. You shouldn't have to,
I mean, she did just watch this guy kill himself in front of her.
Right.
That would be a lot for anybody to witness, whether they have any emotional stakes in this case or not. And she has all of the emotional stakes in it. So this lady is largely there just to honestly pad the kill count.
Sure.
She is just there to get murdered 4 seconds after we meet her as a person.
Right.
But she's doing a very sweet thing and that should be acknowledged.
Yeah, absolutely. But as Lee goes into the house to talk to her mom is outside with a shotgun and immediately murders the partner in the car. So we now know the mom is the accomplice.
Oh, yeah. It's very clear. It's not Santa Claus, Todd, you idiot.
No, it's not. But she looks out the window, sees the bloody car, knows what has happened. Now everything's falling into place.
Of course.
She goes gets outside and is like, oh my God, and just kind of briskly walking till she runs into her mom about to shoot a doll. And she's like, the fuck? And she shoots the doll. The head explodes. A little black dust poofs out of Lee's head, but then also out of the doll's head. What?
Did her mom knock the dust off of her head? What is all of that?
Here's my question. Is she still psychic after this?
Oh my God. Did she blast the psychic out of her head by shooting the doll?
Was she only psychic because her doll still exists, but she's not dead?
Fuck. Did I lose my plastic psychic sphere or when I had my accident? And that's why I can no longer predict the future? Paige, these are all questions we should be asking.
Are all psychics just hearing Jody?
No, they're largely just scam artists. But
okay. Well, that's fine.
I have so many questions about this. And at this point, there is a metaphor that I'm seeing being built around this movie. And it's interesting to me that a lot of it is Paige, see if this tracks for you at all.
Okay.
And this is not, I didn't read anything, guys. And please remember, I'm an idiot. But here is the metaphor I saw building. The mom is the accomplice, and seeing her in the habit has a very clergy vibe, right?
Sure.
And the whole movie has been about this, girl experienced some level of trauma she blocked out as a child. We're following her later in life.
Right.
And we're sort of relearning what some of that trauma is, and she's addressing it. And all of this is set with the satanic panic pulling you away from what is actually happening in the scene because they're like, oh, it's a devil worship thing.
Right.
Whatever. And I'm not saying that it's not, that it is saying this because in the movie, they are worshipers of Satan.
Right.
That is an actual thing people do this way.
Yes, it's a practical thing within the world. Yes.
Which is not a thing that necessarily exists in reality, just to be clear. It exists way in this world. So give it that.
Here's what I'll say. There are people that worship Satan. I don't know that they have magic powers. Go ahead.
Exactly. Like, it's not like they are of no threat because they worship Satan in this world that we live in, you and I, Paige. But I do want to acknowledge in the world of the movie, they absolutely do have magic powers on some level.
Right.
And I have to we're living in that world. So I'm not like, I am not going to cast aspersions as to like, that's not how it's going to work in real life.
Right.
That's how it works in the movie. So that's all that matters to me.
Right.
Anyway, I do think because of the clergy vibes and because of the supernatural layer of it, like it felt like the movie had something to say about like the way clergy was not great to children and the parents sort of helped with that. It's a very touchy subject, but it is like the parents forced children to go to church where they should have been concerned about the leadership in that church.
Because nobody suspects the lady from church.
Or the leadership from church, right? Nobody expects the priest to be a bad dude. And largely because most of them are not bad dudes. And it's not, I don't want to have to get into this every time we talk about this because like, yeah, some really shitty stuff happened at the church around the time this movie takes place.
Right.
And that like the Spotlight movie and article like reporting like exposed a lot of that. And it's not just to the Catholic Church, it's been all over, whatever.
Right.
I thought the movie was trying to say some very specific things about the parents' culpability in that relationship with the church that led to the abuse. That is sort of what I thought the movie was building. I don't know if it actually gets there. So I think I may be reading too much into that.
Well, I mean...
at this point, I saw something like that building.
Here's what I will say. If they were trying to, they were not successful because it is fumbly. They do not land it. Let's put it that way.
I'm not sure they land anything specifically. And that's, I think, why the movie, I think, is good, but not great.
Right. And I feel like... for me, if you wanted to land a metaphor, you got to get rid of the magical realism.
Yes,
I agree. Make sense?
I agree. And they don't. They hold to it.
Yeah, or at least have it be explained away, like in Black Phone, where it's like these are the hallucinations of somebody experiencing such a traumatic event.
Yes.
You know, like where you could explain it away. You can't really in this movie. And so, because I do think that if there was no magical realism, you could interpret this as someone through solving these murders, trying to heal their abuse at the hands of religious extremism.
Yeah.
Or at abuses from a religious institution. Now, here's what I will say, Todd. I think they're trying to do a wolf in sheep's clothing thing where the devil appears in the way you least expect. Because before Lee happens, the camera thing happens, right? So she's the second one. And so I think, because in the camera one, we find out that there was a priest that came to their house all the time. And then one day it went wrong.
Yeah.
And so there's a part of me that's like, did the priest bring it? Was that why? And so is it that people implicitly trust the people from the church and don't question it? Because if somebody showed up at my house and was like, you want a gift? I'm like, I didn't enter anything. Slam. Like, you know.
I'd be like, get that packaged up AirTag out of my house, sir.
Bye. Yeah. Because, And within this, I actually do really like the way they represent the devil in this movie, where it's basically just like that cloaked figure, just dark.
Yeah.
Just pure darkness. I think that's fascinating. There's lots of different interpretations. But yeah, I think you might be reading into that a little too much.
Yeah, I mean, I will own that. I think so, because they don't land it.
Yeah.
So like,
I think with no magical realism, that's probably where we land. But because there is magical realism, we don't land there.
Yeah, and at that point, when I was formulating that thought, like I thought at the end of the movie it was going to be revealed that like, no, this is like real reality and like men.
And her mom had a relationship with this man that was a serial killer and became an accomplice.
Yes.
That's a way more powerful movie for me personally.
Same.
I prefer that interpretation. It is not what we get.
Same. I think that changed it from a great to a good to me, but it's still a good movie. And man, did it scare me. Anyway, let's keep powering through it though.
Yeah, because we're almost to the end. So we get a break and we get a narration from her mom. And her mom is like, he came to our house. And now, interestingly, he ties her up the way Erons used to tie people up.
Yeah, so Paige, like, this movie but like
borrows,
pays homage to a lot of like
notable serial killers
of the methods that a lot of serial killers use. I really liked that. As a true crime nerd, you're like, oh, we did it earlier. That's Zodiac. That's BTK. That's, so you're like seeing these things, right? So I love that from like a true crime nerd perspective. And I think that I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure you're not the only one that saw that stuff because especially like with how popular true crime is, I'm sure a lot of people saw those.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's why they put them there. That's the whole reason.
It's great.
But so the devil was in her house, one would assume, and they were supposed to be one of the murders, but she makes a deal that she will help them in exchange for letting her daughter live. And so we get flashbacks of her basically delivering these dolls to houses. Now, at first I thought she was just an accomplice and she was just killing people, which would have been great.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was weird magic dolls, I was like, come on now.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah. She delivers the doll hypnotizes the dad kills everybody.
But wouldn't it have been awesome if the mom had walked in like a wetsuit, like a deep sea diver wetsuit? So like nothing from her could potentially pollute the crime scene. And she is walking through the house like a 1910s diver with a shotgun just blasting a family down. Like it would have been.
So then I started blasting.
It would have been crazy. But like, it would have made sense too.
It would have made more sense because we do see multiple instances of, and now granted, this is old crime scene science, not new crime scene science. Modern day, they would have caught this lady so fast because she leaving DNA everywhere. And just like an outline on the couch that's not covered in blood where she was sitting. Like clearly there was somebody sitting here.
But it was in that like 1910s wetsuit. So they were like, I don't know, man. It may have been like a 10-foot person. Because that was a big old booty. Like it was a huge booty.
Huge.
Somebody called Sir Mix-a-Lot. That was around this time, wasn't it?
No, that's much later. But no, because Clinton's picture's in the back of the FBI office.
Yeah,
so,
I
think
this movie takes place between 93 and 2000.
Yeah. Because like initially I was like in the 70s, no, but yes, modern day Sir Mix-a-Lot for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I did the math on the main character. Sorry.
Yeah.
She was born in 1965.
Okay.
Which you sort of have to backtrack from the date
because of the 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that attack happened in 74, right?
Right.
And if this takes place during Bill Clinton's administration, which it does because they're in the FBI office and his picture's on the wall.
And his picture's on the wall.
And that's like that's the president's picture. It's always going to be the current president. So that's how you know who it is. That would have been between 93 and 2000. So she would have been late 20s, mid 30s, depending upon where in that timeline it actually fell.
And I'm going to say late 20s probably. So this is 93 to 96.
That was my guess too, because she does look a little young to be 35,
Right. Anyway, the way this works, as the movie tells us, is she shows up with the doll. The doll has a phantasm sphere in its head. And then the doll hypnotizes the dad to kill everybody. And then she leaves, leaving the doll there. But for some reason, no one ever finds the other dolls. They disappear. I don't know. But
I got the vibe that they find them some places and they don't find them other places. So like the dolls were one of those things that the dolls show up at some of them, but not all of them.
Right.
So I don't know how important it is, but it's important on some level, right? That was like, I thought what the vibe was with the dolls because they clearly do find them sometime.
Right. But we cut to Lee wakes up in her house and her mom is gone. The phone is ringing. She answers it. It's a voice that says, "You're late for Miss Ruby's birthday party. You'll remember Miss Ruby is Blair Underwood's daughter."
Yeah.
So she hauls ass, screaming all the way. She gets to the house. Her mom is already there with the doll, and they are already clearly hypnotized. And she's like, "That's my mom. She's the accomplice." And Blair Underwood uses the Dune voice to just be like, "Sit down!" And you're like, "Oh my God, okay."
But this is where she goes from a 1 to a 10, right?
Right.
She being Lee Harker, right? Our main character, right?
Right.
And from this point on, the rest of the movie is, I think because at this point we knew 3 minutes ago it was going to be supernatural stuff.
Sure.
I was like, okay, cool. I'm here for the ride. Like I accepted it. I'm here for the ride. And it takes you on a ride. From the second she goes from 1 to 10, it's nuts. And like in a fun and still sort of scary way. Because when she's sitting on the couch and she's talking to her partner and like his wife is there and she's talking and it's clear that he's going to murder her and her like still like performatively being like a great host and gracious, like all of that stuff. Like it's so creepy, uncomfortable. The performances in this are like stellar. It's specifically in this scene, the whole movie, of course, yes, too. But this scene really creeped me out.
Yeah. And he walks the wife into the kitchen and you're like, she's toast. You got to go in there and stop it. And she doesn't. She just stands there.
She just like, I'll wait it out. I'll wait it out, see what happens.
And yeah. And we hear her get stabbed to death.
The wife. Yeah. We don't. Yeah.
The wife. And her mom is like, don't stop it. They all have to die. I'm doing this for you so that you'd be allowed to grow up and that you wouldn't burn in hell. Which again, if there is no magical realism, if there's just real and it's just her delusional beliefs, that's a way more interesting movie.
I know, right?
But no.
If this is all happening because she, in her mind, the mom is the she in that,
right,
thinks that she did make that Faustian bargain, the Faustian bargain that she actually does make in this movie. Like, she does make it. But it would have been cool if all of that was in the mom's mind and she is just low-key on her own murdering these people.
Right.
That would have been super cool. I also sort of like the way it plays out in this scene. Once we know it's supernatural, I'm on board for that. Like, I think they do sell that in a fun, effective way, too.
They do. I think it needed more time to breathe, or we should have not had it. But regardless, Blair Underwood comes out. She shoots him. The mom is like, no. Yeah. She shoots her mom because her mom pulls out a real satanic-looking dagger to kill the little girl.
That looked metal as shit. I was like, hell yeah, let's go. Oh, you're dead. Never mind.
She shoots the mom, and then she pulls the girl away from the doll and shoots the doll, or goes to, but she's out of bullets.
Yeah.
And then we hear a voice say, happy birthday to you, Lee Harker. And she just goes, let's go. And then we leave. We cut back to a scene of Nick Cage basically being like, I worship Satan, mwah. And that's the movie.
But Paige, having seen the movie, having talked about the movie, what did you think about LongLegs?
Close. It's, for me, I agree with you. It's good, not great.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, it was enjoyable to watch, but there are pieces of it that just don't work for me, especially because you're like, oh, I could see how this could work easily, but fine.
Yeah.
All right. If you like Seven and, Silence of the Lambs, you'll like it. It's just not going to be better than Seven or Silence of the Lambs.
Which are two amazing movies. I think to even be mentioned amongst them, you have to be a good movie.
Right.
So like, if you like horror, if you like being scared, and if you like the vibes of those two movies, you'll like this movie. Like, watch it. You'll like it. I don't like being scared. I hope to never watch this again. But yeah, I get why people were talking about it when it came out earlier this year. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But Paige, do you have any fun facts for us?
Yes.
Well, hit us with your fun facts.
LongLegs fun facts. Many of LongLegs' encrypted messages contain misspellings and poor grammar. This is an homage to the Zodiac killer, who was also known for his coded messages containing typos, including the one from that documentary where it's that lady's name one letter off, and they're like, but it's misspelled. I'm like, one letter!
And then it cuts to that lady, and she's like, but he was like a really great guy. And I was like, ma'am, we just got definitive proof almost that he was gonna kill you next.
He was gonna kill you. And then they were like, what was gonna happen around this time? She's like, well, he wanted to run away with me and get married, but I had already married somebody else, so I told him no. And I was like, he was gonna kill you, girl. He was going to kill you.
I think he was even in the area. Didn't he send the letter from like her zip code or whatever, which was across the country? He was hunting her. Anyway, and it cuts to her like, I don't know, he seemed like a great guy. I really loved him.
But he really helped me and my brothers at a tough time.
Ugh.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Insane. Watch the documentary, guys. It's honestly really great.
Osgood Perkins claims that Nicolas Cage has a particular skill set, that he can speak high or low without messing up the audio. And he said the sound guy came over one day and is like, I don't know how he does it, but when he's mic'd, I'm watching the dials, and when he goes big, he goes right to the line. And when he goes low, he goes right to the line. I've never seen anything like it in my life. All right, cool.
I mean, the dude is a professional and has been acting for almost his entire life.
Sure.
So like, I get that he's great at the craft. I see what the performances he calls in.
Yeah.
Like, dude's great.
Now, to promote the movie, Neon, which Neon is trying to be the next Day 24, and I'm here for it. Good for them.
Yeah, reach for the stars, baby. Let's go.
Neon created a phone number, which, if dialed, played a pre-recorded, extremely disturbing message from Nicolas Cage as the killer. If you want to try calling that number, it is 458-666-4355. 5.
No, thank you.
Despite the praise and acclaim for his portrayal as Longlegs, Nicolas Cage has said that this will be his first and only portrayal of a serial killer for film. He said, quote, "I know that the phone's going to be ringing off the hook to play serial killers after Longlegs, and that's not really what I like to do. I don't like violence, and I don't want to play people who are hurting people."
I mean, good for him. Like, I don't blame him. But man, I get why the phone would be ringing after this performance, because he crushes it. But I mean, it's Nick Cage, guys. He's great. Dude's great. Have you heard of this guy, Nick Cage, Paige?
You heard of him?
He might be great.
Yeah.
You should check him out if you haven't heard. Yeah.
Check it out.
He's Nick
Who
Cage.
knows?
He's great.
At the request of Osgood Perkins, they did not use Nicolas Cage in the posters or the trailer for the movie, despite him playing the titular character. So they had to come up with a creative plan to promote and sell the movie without letting people know it was Nicolas Cage, which they did. They put out a lot of stuff where they were like, this is one of the scariest movies of the year or whatever. And it was effective. A lot of people went and saw it.
I did get the vibe that like the Nick Cage of it all was a reveal.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people didn't know that until they saw the movie.
Right. Yes. Longlegs quotes the poem Satan Says by Sharon Olds in his messages. The poem is about a girl locked in a cedar box being told by Satan that he can get her out if she blasphemes against her family. She does so, but he seals her in the box and leaves her there, which is why you never take the Faustian gambit.
I was literally upset that when the mother didn't, when the mother like agreed to the Faustian bargain and was like going as far as to be like a full-on accomplice and deliver these dolls, that she couldn't get like a silver violin. Like, what does it take to get like, are there levels? I know she didn't like beat him or anything, but like,
Right.
she's on his team. Can you get him like a level of like violin or just violins?
Maybe it was because it was in her living room and not in the crossroads. Anyway.
Gotta catch him in these crossroads.
Gotta catch him in the crossroads. Osgood Perkins had only 2 actors that he wanted to play Longlegs, either Nicolas Cage or Brad Pitt.
Oh, shit. Okay.
It would have been a very different movie, but
Okay, controversial take. I'd love to see a Brad Pitt version of this.
Same.
Just because I want to see the choices Brad Pitt would make.
Yes.
Because it would be very different. I think Nick Cage is the perfect Nick Cage for this movie. I want to see what the perfect Brad Pitt for this movie would be.
Yeah.
And I think he could find it, but I don't think it would be at all like the Nick Cage version.
No, I think we would get more of a black phone.
Yes, I do think it would be sexier for you, Paige.
I just meant more played straightforward because
Yes.
Ethan Hawke, even in Black Phone, he's at times, usually only when he's wearing the mask is he really heightened, but out of it, he's very kind of subdued.
Yeah.
Anyway, test audiences praised Nicolas Cage's performance, but they did mention that he was so off-putting it potentially could scare viewers off.
I mean, that's the goal with horror. Isn't that like, that's like what
Yeah,
you
no,
want?
I was like, effective. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a book, The Golden Bough, B-O-U-G-H, a study in magic and religion by J.G. Fraser that is shown in many of the different crime scenes. This would have been a book used at the time. It's a 12-volume series of anthropological texts on the observations of mythical and religious practices, taboos, and ceremonies from around the world. There are more updated texts. If you're curious, I would probably defer to the more updated ones, but this is one that they were definitely using at the time. The end credits scroll down instead of up. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Yep. Test audiences described it as having imagery very, very similar to Silence of the Lambs, Zodiac, and Seven.
Yeah, I mean, it borrows heavily from all of that.
Yep. I'll end on this one. So if you like this one, you might want to check out Osgood Perkins' debut film, The Blackcoat's Daughter. It has similar satanic panic themes. And the star of that film is Kiernan Shipka, who was in this movie, but also Sabrina and Mad Men. We talked about her briefly in this movie. And those are your fun facts.
Well, thank you for those fun facts, Paige. Let's talk a little bit about box office. So what do you think the production budget was for Longlegs? And it was this year. So this year.
I have to recuse myself because I unfortunately know, and I know what it made opening weekend too.
Fair enough. So I'll just go ahead and tell you, it was just under $10 million, or they actually say it as under $10 million. And I feel like that's an important distinction.
That's all on the screen.
It is.
Yeah, all on the screen. That looks great for 10 mil.
It does. I bought that this was a $10 million movie. In fact, I thought to myself, I hope Nicolas Cage got a piece of the back end, because if this was just a $10 million movie, he didn't get what he was worth
right
for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But because you already know, I'll just go ahead and say this. The movie came out on the weekend of July 12th, and it was number 2 the weekend it came out. It was beat by Despicable Me 4, and then, of course, LongLegs was number 2. Number 3 was Inside Out 2. Number 4 was A Quiet Place Day 1, and number 5 was Fly Me to the Moon. And you know, so I'll just go ahead and tell them, it made $22.4 million in the theaters that weekend. Now, Paige, do you spoil it all? Or just that? So, like, do you want to take a guess as to how much it made domestically at the box office?
I remember this being pretty popular when it came out. Domestically, I'm going to say it makes about 60 mil.
You're very close. It was actually a little bit better, though, at $74 million, 74.3. And Paige, it made 34.6 internationally, so almost 110 mil. It was $1.9 million.
Okay, all right.
It made. So, on under $10 million, for it to make 10 times $10 million,
Yeah.
$110 million, that's really good. That's really good return on investment. And I think Osgood Perkins will definitely be making movies for a while after this. And should.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it is good.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at his filmography, they get progressively better ratings. And he's still early on in his career as a director and a writer. And so I'm excited to see what else they have in store.
Yeah, I'm excited that he wrote and directed this. Like, I'm really into that with, obviously, Jordan Peele. But the guy from The Whitest Kids You Know who did Barbarian is doing that kind of stuff now.
Oh, yeah. I really want to see his next one. Zach Krieger.
Yeah, like, let those guys cook. And this guy, too. Like, Osgood Perkins, too. Absolutely.
And the girl who did Mithrigan.
Oh, yes.
Akilah Cooper.
The one who's on...
the one who works with James Wan all the time.
All of those are his production company, yeah.
Yeah.
But, Paige, that's your box office. Do you want to hit him with the scary scale?
Our scary scale is a scale of how scary we found this film today when we watched it. Our scale goes from 1, which is Ghostbusters, 10, which is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Todd, where are you putting it?
I'm going to put this at a 7.
Ooh.
Like, this really scared me.
Scarier than Alien Romulus?
Yes, Paige, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, that may be because I watched it, like, late at night in the dark, and I don't always do that with horror movies.
And you didn't have the jazz of anti-capitalism to, like, bolster your spirits?
I did enjoy that in Alien Romulus. You're not wrong at all. Although, watching the election results while recording this is breaking my heart a little bit more and more. But yeah, this is not as fun as that one, but it is, I think, scarier. This is definitely scarier for me.
All right. Yeah, I think I'm going to clock this in around a 2 or 3, maybe a 3.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah. It gets progressively less scary for me as it goes. Let me put it that way.
Is it because he's less scary on the more you see him? Yeah.
Yeah.
I did like that he had a Slash poster on his wall, and I don't know if it's Slash, but it's pretty close. It looks pretty similar to Slash.
Yeah. So that's your scary scale.
So this week, Paige, you made us watch LongLegs. Actually, this week we changed it up on him, and sorry about that.
Right.
Scheduling-wise. Again, my fault, just to recap. But next week, it is the movie that, like, we said we were going to do last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll be watching I Saw the TV Glow.
So, guys, check out that movie and then check back for that episode with a very special guest.
Yes. And hey, Todd, do you have any reviews for us?
I do. I'm going to read this week from our most recent episode on Spotify. That episode being Alien Romulus. We got a lot of comments on this one, and I'll just say a lot of them were like, this is my favorite franchise of all time. Like, a lot of people love Alien as a franchise.
Yeah, of course.
So, like, we got a lot of those. But I'm going to read the amazing Brandos because they say, Paige, you saw the Aliens director's cut. You know how the colonists got infected.
I do.
They were sent out to the exact same ship from Alien.
Yep.
And Daddy got face hugged.
Yes. And it was one of those things that I realized after we recorded the episode, and a couple other people posted it in the book. It's that they actually colonized the planet that they sent the Nostromo to.
Yeah.
Which is why Ripley freaks out so much. She's like, what do you mean there's a colony there? That's where we found the thing. So they found it in the same place that Ripley and the crew did.
I also want to read this one from the Miggy Mac because I feel personally a ticky-tacked, and that is, my 10-year-old son says that this is the best Alien movie, which I said that. They go on to say, when I asked him to score it, he gave it a 9.5 out of 10. When I asked him to score it on the scary scale, he said it was 2 out of 10, not very scary, and I gave it a 6. So disagree, child.
I gave it a 6 as well. I scored that pretty high.
Yeah.
That was a scary movie. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So like disagree, but that child's like can handle more than me apparently. Anyway, if you want to have me read your 5-star Apple reviews or Spotify comments, leave us an Apple review or Spotify comment and I will do just that.
Then that's going to be it for us this week. I'm Paige.
And I'm your horror virgin Todd.
Keep it oogie spooky.
Yeah. Have an amazing week, guys. Bye. I really hope things turn around in the election results, nerds.